My area of research is in experimental particle physics. I am here to speak to you about the African Strategy for Fundamental and Applied Physics, where we also want to incorporate biophysics and rely on you experts in that area to help us in that front. I am also a member of the International Organizing Committee of the African School of Physics. So I manage that school every 2 years on the continent, but we can speak about that another time. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. Lawrence, could you give me sharing capability?
Yep, you have it now. Or you should have it. Is it working?
Yes.
Okay.
So I'll go right to business. All right, so you should be seeing my screen now. So Lawrence has asked me to talk to you about the African strategy for fundamental and applied physics. We have contacted some members of this audience about this project. I'm just briefly going to tell you what it is, what the project is about, and obviously we need your help and your involvement. So basically, we would like the African physics community at large to come together and define what are the major priorities that should be important for the continent, and then feed that information to the policymakers, maybe people who are at the African Union, or African Academy of Sciences, or African Network of Science Academies, those people who may have a pile of money and may not necessarily be physicists, but are wondering, where should we put the funding, which directions are important, what is going on at the global scale, and how should Africa fit into that? So then it's the physicists who are then telling policymakers that here is the direction, this is where we need to go. We have talked about it, and this is what we suggest. So that's basically the process of this strategy. So we started this thing with these 5 persons here. So that's myself. I am at Brookhaven National Laboratory. Professor Simon Cornell is in the audience here from the University of Johannesburg, and he's also in charge of the African Light Source. Professor Farida Fassi is from Mohammed V University in Morocco. Professor Shaban Khalil is from Egypt, Zawal City University of Science and Technology. And then Dr. Firouz Malek, she's originally from Algeria, but she's currently in France. Everything I'm going to talk to you about is on this website here, africanphysicsstrategy.org. Now, physics strategy, what exactly are we talking about? Other regions of the world are accustomed to doing strategies. Last year in June, there was an update of the European strategy for particle physics that was publicly released. A statement in there says that the European strategy for particle physics is the cornerstone of Europe's decision-making process for the long-term future of that field. It's mandated by the CERN Council, and it is formed through a broad consultation of the grassroots particle physics community. It actively solicits opinions of physicists from around the world and it develops in close coordination with similar processes in the US and Japan in order to ensure coordination between regions and optimal use of global resources. Now, the one that was released last year was a continuation of the previous one done in 2006 and 2013. So this process is a process that gets repeated every 7 to 10 years to update previous strategies and update directions and important key recommendations. So at the moment, the United States is also preparing its strategy. It's known as a SNOMAS 2021 final report. Actually, because of COVID, it has been pushed to next year. So the final report will be a year later in 2022. This follow a strategy that they did in 2013. So it's a particle physics community planning exercise. That's what they call in the US. That's how they call it, and it has this name of SNOMAS because of where it was organized the first time. And it's organized by the Division of Particle and Fields of the American Physical Society. It's a scientific study, and it provides opportunity for the entire particle physics community to come together to identify and document the scientific vision for the future of particle physics in the United States and its international partners. So this SNOMAS, which is in the process now, will define the most important question for particle physics and identify promising opportunity to address that. So that's the exercise that is going on now. It involves over 2,000 physicists in the US and also international participation. Then that will produce a report. Then that report will fed into a panel that they call P5 for Particle Physics Project Prioritization Panel. That panel is a group of people also mandated by the US Department of Energy and the NSF, National Science Foundation, that will take that input from SNOMAS, the strategy report, and then it will develop a strategic planning for the US particle physics that can be executed over 10 years time scale or with a global vision of 20 years. So essentially, P5 will tell the Departments of Energy and the National Science Foundation, here are the major directions. If you want to put money somewhere, this is where it should go. And that information comes from the strategy report after physicists have discussed. So in the US, that we started this SNOMAS 2021 last year. It actually started in March 2020. It's supposed to last for over a year and something. Now it will go until 2022. So you see it's a process of a couple of years full of a lot of meetings and discussions and letters of intent and white papers, and eventually there is a document that is produced with the key recommendations. And that's the report now that goes to P5 for the US. In Europe, that report goes to the CERN Council, which then feeds that back into the European Union body that define, what the priority should be. So as we are speaking now, Latin America is also working on its strategy for high energy, cosmology, and astrophysics. It's the first time they are doing it. They started in 2016. The idea started then, and 2 years later in 2018, they got an endorsement from the Council of Latin America Science Education Ministers. And at the moment, they are writing the first version of that strategy document. There are other fields, so I'm not just talking to you about particle physics. Astrophysics, physicists also in Europe had their strategy. In the US, the nuclear physicists and as well as the astrophysicists also have their 10 years visions that they develop. Yeah, so then the question is, in Africa, can we get into the process of doing the same thing, developing strategies and making sure that we as concerned physicists for African development, can we come up with documents after a lot of discussion and shaking everything up and then telling politicians nationally and at Pan-African level that here are the directions we as experts in the field, we believe that this is where Africa should go in this particular field, in that particular field, and so forth. Yeah, so it's not just particle. I'm just in particle physics. I know the stuff there, but it can be done in biophysics. It can be done in other areas. Okay? It can be done, for all the fields that are of interest to Africa, and that's exactly what I really want to talk to you about. So the objective will be to develop a strategy to increase African education and research capabilities, to improve collaborations, international partnerships, sponsorship, and talking to policymakers on the strategic directions that are likely to impact African development. That is really what is important, that we need to develop that culture to make politicians and policymakers listen to us, that this is where you should put effort, this is where you should put money. And we repeat that every so often, every 10 years, we go back, we look, the recommendations of this strategy we did 10 to 7 years ago, what has been applied, what has been done? How do we change it now, given the global international developments when we are doing the new strategy? Yeah, so this should engage African scientists and the international community. So it has to be done in the global context, right? It shouldn't be a few people who want to talk about their own research. We need to look beyond what we are doing and ask ourselves what is of interest to Africa and what should be the major directions. The process of developing the strategy itself, it could take a few years. In Europe, it took 2 years, the last one they did. The US one also will take 2 years. Latin America, because it was the first one, like I said, the idea started in 2016. It's only now that they are in the final stages of writing the final report. So if we do this in Africa, it may take a couple of years or more to have a final document that we can give to the African Union or to the African Academy of Sciences, and also to the national academies, and so that they too can have those reports and try to put them into into good use. So for Africa, it will be the first. We want to start it. And we want to make sure that all of you guys participate. I see that you guys are experts in biophysics. We definitely need you to tell us what Africa should do, what should be the directions Africa should take in biophysics. That's exactly what we would like to see. So we have formed a steering committee of these 5 people that I just mentioned. We have an advisory committee made of a group of international people. We are now defining a bunch of physics groups and group conveners. And I will try to take you through some of those things in a moment. So now let me just take you to the website that we have, which is this one here. So if you click on there, you go to the website, you come here. So there is some work that is being done. It started, but not the physics work has not yet completely started. So when you go to this website, you see on the left side all of the physics group that we believe are of interest to Africa, and you see biophysics here. And this is a very, very important field for the continent. And we have approached these people to convene this group. So you have a chart is here. I'm not sure if Elsie is connected here, but Emmanuel also is here. So these are all the people familiar to you. And we have also already discussed with them the scope of what we expect and so forth. And we will be getting back to them in terms of the structure organization of this group. So we expect that all of you connected right now will be engaged in this effort. And I'll tell you in a moment what exactly that effort means. So back on this page, there are a couple of documents that I would like to tell you about. One of them is a code of conduct. So we expect that this process will involve a few people like we have right now, and will involve discussion among experts, and that necessitates some professional way of interacting among ourselves, which we wrote here in this code of conduct. You can take a look at it. Then there's the working group guideline for each of the group. So what do we expect? What exactly is the process of developing this strategy? Well, so at some point, we will make a call of letters of interest. Basically, it will be a call to, the community of physicists and so forth, and all of you guys, and we will say, in a 1 or 2 page, would you please tell us what you believe Africa should be focusing on in biophysics, or in astrophysics, or in physics education, or to lessen brain drain, whatever. What is your thought, or in your professional opinion, what do you think is the interest for Africa? So these are the letters of interest, of letters of intent. It will not be more than 2 pages, 1 or 2 pages. It does not engage you to have to develop it, but it's just we want to get the information from you of what is important. So when we will make that call of letters of interest, then we will stare at it. When I say we, the one that fall into the category of biophysics will be stared at by Chad and Emmanuel and Elsie and others. And then they will be categorized into a small set of what we call white papers. So the white papers will be like the major topic. Let's say, for example, after staring at the letters of intent, the conveners and so forth come up with 5 major areas of biophysics that Africa should be focusing on. So the number of white paper topic will be much fewer than the letters of interest. Letters of interest could be submitted by all sort of people, by whatever they think, and some of them might overlap in their ideas. And then the white paper will collate those things and group them into smaller major topics. Those are the ones that will be developed into the strategy, those white papers. So then the white papers, the letters of interest that are collected into specific white papers will then ask the people who submitted those letters of interest if they are willing to develop those ideas into white papers. The white papers could be 6 or 8 pages max. They should be of publishable quality. If, let's say, 5 or 6 people say that, okay, we are going to develop this direction into a white paper, they should do it to the level where they can publish it and have their name on it. We're not going to put our name on it. We haven't done this study. We have not looked into that review. But so then you get something out of it because you have done it. It's a research paper for you. Your name is on it. Now, there could be white papers that are already researched, that are already done. I mean, you guys have been thinking about these things already. You may have already done a lot of stuff. So the material may already exist to form the basis of white papers for the biophysics area. So eventually, those white papers, after during that process, the conveners will be meeting with you. They will be calling from meetings to discuss the progress. They will be encouraging the white paper productions and so forth. They will be assisting you to try to finish those white papers. And then eventually those will be, when the white papers are done, the conveners will put them together and then write 1 or 2 page executive summary, let's say for the biophysics group. The astrophysicists also will do the same thing. We in particle physics will do ours. All of the groups will come with their report, which will be, excuse me, essentially a few pages written by the conveners of each of the groups with references and links to the white papers. They won't copy them back, they will just link to them. So essentially the strategy will become these executive reports from each of the groups with links to hopefully published white papers. Yeah, and that's what we'll put together. And then at the level of the steering committee, then we will then write the overall executive summary on top of the executive summary of each of the group. And we will send that to the International Advisory Committee for review and endorsement. And at that point, with the conveners, we'll get together and we'll then agree on the priorities coming from each of the areas. That priority also will be attached to the document, and that's what we will send to the policymakers that I mentioned before. And that will be the end of the strategy. So we have a timeline here, a tentative timeline. This may shift a little bit. In this process, we expect to have 2 major meetings. Hopefully there could be in-person meeting at the end of this year in December in Morocco during the African School of the African Conference of Fundamental Physics. We plan to have an in-person meeting, and during that meeting we'll invite all of the conveners of the group and anybody who wants to come, so that we can actually see where we are, how each of the groups are doing, what are the major thinking that are coming from the group. That's like maybe hopefully it's a halfway point or at least 30% into the process. And then at the end, when we have the report before it's released and so forth, we'll have a symposium where each group will then present their final report, their directions, and they will tell us how they came up with those major points that they believe Africa should be focusing on. So that will be, and then after that, there will be a few changes or some cosmetic and so forth of the report, and then we will send it to the policymakers, and that will be the official end of the strategy. And then our job is done, and hopefully the politicians will listen, and then they will take that into advisement and do whatever they want with the money. And then 7 years later, we'll come back again to revise this strategy, and hopefully it will not be me, but maybe younger folks. If we do it right and we set it up correctly, other people will come and take it forward, and then it will become a tradition in Africa to do this regularly, just like the Europeans and the Americans are doing, and now just like the Latin Americans have started doing. Now, in terms of endorsement, we have an endorsement from the African Physical Society, the African Network of Science Academies, the advisory committee. I didn't show you those. I mean, all of these people. The advisory committee is made of all of these people from these international organizations that have strong interest in African development. So we have endorsement from all of these people personally, and then we are requesting endorsement officially from their institute as well. So all of those processes are going on right now. And I show you the biophysics group. Most of these groups are more or less filled, but there are areas where they are not completely filled yet. So we still need suggestion for conveners in some of these areas. So like material physics, we have some people, but not many. And also here as well, we are looking for more conveners, but other places like here, for example, we have already people who have agreed to serve as co-conveners. So that's where we are. Once we fill all of the other areas with the conveners and so forth, then we'll have a meeting, and then from that point we'll have the formal requests. The call will go out Africa-wide and internationally for the letters of intent. Now remember, this is not asking for too much of you. It's a 1 or 2 page, tell us what you think is important for Africa in your expertise and in your area. And then from that point, we will then work with the conveners to decide what should be the major points of white paper developments in each of the areas. So that's, I will stop there. Simon, you may want to add something since you are a member of the steering committee as well.
Thought I would just point out one thing, but thank you very much, Katevi, is that there's also a light source subgroup, and it would also connect with this conference. And the light source group consists of Tabitha Dobbins, Thierry de Almeida, and Gihan Kamel. Probably some of them are already known to you. And they would advise specifically on the light source aspects. And then obviously structural biology is a very, very important component driving the light source.
Yes, that's right. I didn't talk about all of, yeah, Simon here is the, for the light source.
Yes, I think I will also expand a little bit on the light source in a little while.
All right.
Okay. So thank you, Katevi and Simon. Why don't we open the floor for questions and make sure that sort of everybody sort of understands sort of the framework in which we're trying to advance a strategy for physics. We could then see if, because biophysics depends on a lot of different fields, I mean, we could probably try to invoke the same type of process in chemistry and biochemistry and bioengineering and applied maths. So let's sort of open that up for discussion. Also, so this is a Pan-African plan and or Pan-African strategy, but I think the resources come from national governments and even universities therein. So let's also talk about how do we balance and synergize sort of national plans into one big Pan-African plan. So I'll open up the floor. Everyone can unmute if they when they want. So Sam has raised his hand. Sam, go ahead. Let me see. Do I have to?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you very much for the talk. I think for me, my question is in two parts. So first is just clarification. You mentioned that probably are going to look at maybe 5 areas to focus on that would benefit Africa, so that at least you can have an impact. I didn't quite get clearly the basis that you have for selecting the 5 focus areas. And the second part of my question is just to understand from what has been tried so far in terms of what to focus on when you talk about biophysics in Africa, what has been tried out so far and how far have we gone? Because I'm just looking at how we can get buy-in from the different organizations that can be supportive of this initiative. Thank you.
Yes, Samuel, actually, I mentioned 5. It doesn't have to be 5, just an example. I think the main point is that we expect that the number of letters of intent would be somewhat large. Hopefully, many people will reply and tell us what are their opinion. And then the conveners, you know, with the experts in the area would then agree on what are the main major areas to focus on in biophysics. It could be more than 5, of course. That depends on the area and the expertise and what is important for Africa that we have agreed on. So that's a physics decision. We will not limit it. If you guys come up with 10 areas or whatever, hopefully it will not be, you know, a multitude, but it will be really nice subsets that can be fleshed out into a well articulated narrative. So then the question of buy-in is really very important for Africa. Like as I mentioned, in Europe, they already get the mandate directly from SEM Council, which already now has the mandate from the European Union, and that document goes up the chain and is taken seriously. In the US as well, I mentioned the process where once the community has produced a report, there is a panel that takes it and then proposes the major directions, which then informs DOE and NSF. And in Latin America, I mentioned they all actually have the endorsement from the Council of Latin American Ministers. This happened in Guatemala in 2018. So it's already known at not just the country level, but the entire subcontinent of South America has endorsed that process. Now in Africa, we are still struggling to get all the endorsement, but that is not discouraging us. We have the endorsement from the African Physical Society and the African Network of Science Academies, and we are talking to the African Academy of Sciences right now. And then from there, we hope that we'll get the attention of the African Union. And also we believe that once we get this process going at the grassroots level among experts and physicists, and then we will get the attention of the politicians. In fact, some of the International Advisory Committee members here were suggested by top level politicians. There are some names here that come directly at the recommendation of some of the science ministers in South Africa. So, we hope that, so first we need the buy-in from the community, right? So it's you guys who are in biophysics who have to really define the biophysics area. Nobody can impose that on you. So that buy-in we need at the grassroots level, and that we want to do that. And then we certainly need to engage the politicians to listen to us and also to support the effort.
Okay, thank you. Can I just a last comment, Lawrence?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think what I can get from this is probably related to some of our efforts. Because currently we've got a program cooperation agreement with the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa on how to promote nanotechnology in Africa. So we're looking at it from different angles. I think one of the points that came up just now in terms of the response is the buy-in from the politicians. So yes, we are also looking at how we can take the angle of nanotechnology policy in Africa, so they can be all encompassing. Because if you also look at it from that angle, it can really be helpful to make sure that you get support from all the important stakeholders. So I think this is something that we can probably engage on to probably also share with some of our experiences and see how we can wrap that on to promotion of biophysics in Africa.
Yeah, definitely, Samuel. I completely agree with you. Actually, I was looking to talk to you at some point, but I'll come back to you. I'll contact you later.
Okay, no, thank you very much. That's all for me. Thank you.
Okay, so I'd like to sort of open the floor up for people to sort of respond to how do they see such a framework for strategy working out at their particular institution, in their country, and go as far as sort of in a Pan-African context. Who are the right stakeholders in terms of contributing to the strategy, to submitting the strategy to, so the ministers and parliaments, and what are people's thoughts on all of that? How about from Ghana? I know that Ghana has recently tried to pass a national research fund bill.
Yeah, hello.
Yep.
Yeah, good morning from Ghana.
Yep.
Yeah, I think it's a very good initiative. I just have some couple of questions because this is the first time I'm actually joining. I was invited to this forum by Dr. Elsie Fakofman. We are in the same department in the University of Ghana, Department of Biomedical Engineering. I think the initiative is very good. My question is, when you are dealing with African leaders, they are kind of disjointed when it comes to science. And I'm not sure how we can engage the whole of Africa to try to have a very balanced strategic approach towards this type of strategies that we are trying to develop for science in Africa. And the reason why I'm saying that is, do we have the same kind of response from all the African countries when it comes to trying to come up with something like this? I think that is the concern I have. And if we don't, I'm trying to answer it for you, then how do you then start this top approach coming from your end, how we can convince African leaders to buy into it? Because I think it's a very good initiative. But how do we get them to really buy into the idea?
Yeah. That's really, I fully agree, and that's the challenge that we also really need to overcome, because I mentioned virtually all other regions of the world are doing this, and it's a regular stuff. It's a scientific process into the political decision making. And Latin America is doing this already and has the approval of the Council of the Ministers. And when would Africa be ready to do it? And so, in spite of the challenges that we are facing when it comes to, engaging our political, bodies, we need to start somewhere. I think we also have a challenge of getting ourselves as African scientists organized to just do the exercise. Even that is huge. That means we now talking to each other across countries, across regions, and seeing what is going on in various parts. And we have scientific discourse, and we can come up with a document that we say is a Pan-African document. Then, if we achieve that, I think that's really remarkable. And it will set the standard for the younger generation to also come and say that, yes, there is a process where African scientists can talk across countries and come up with a common vision. In the detail, there could be different things in sub-regions. Like you said, there are differences in countries and cultural differences, language barriers we have to come across, and different scientific evolution across different countries. And we have all of those differences, but there are common problems in physics education that we have to deal with, common issues about brain drain, common issues about giving our scientists proper platform to do research, and funding issue, that virtually zero funding for African research in many countries. So all of those things, if we at least can come together and start working together, then hopefully that is a voice that maybe starting from a few politicians. I mentioned some of these people who are completely supported. We have at least one person over here where one of the science ministers in South Africa, whom we contacted, he said, I want this, please put this to represent me on the advisory committee. So we have the ear of this fellow. And also we have contacted one of the science ministers of Ghana as well. And then we believe that the international community can also be a force for us, because if we come up with a very strategic document that goes to places like ICTP or IUPAP and UNESCO, they can also say, hey, look, your scientists came up with this document. What are you doing with it? They will tell our politicians that. So, you know, hopefully, if we do our exercise correctly, we'll begin to see some shake-up in the good direction.
So let me ask, I mean, one of the things that politicians will say, maybe even sometimes some of our colleagues will say, is that, well, Africa cannot afford to do everything in terms of like what scientific fields to invest in. How do we push back against that? And I think it's especially important that we do so in biophysics, because the field is so broad. So who has a good answer to that one?
Lawrence, can I speak a little?
Absolutely, yes, please.
One of the things in Africa is the non-pursuance of structural biology as a general government policy. And what's happened in South Africa has been that all of the initiatives have been sponsored by foreign resources, either American or British. And the growth has been considerable, but once those funds are cut off, there will actually be a deficit to the extent that it will be impossible to maintain the level at which we have reached. So, unless the South Africans take it over, which they have shown no evidence of doing, it will collapse and retrogress. So actually maintaining the gains of the last 30 years is a serious problem. And of course, everybody is saying that the problem has been covered. And the reason that we have no money is because of the collapse of the economy due to the pandemic. But the argument can be advanced that it is precisely the structural biology that is going to help people to have more insight into remedying the effects of the pandemic. And there is so much that needs to be done specifically in this area. We in Africa are not only going to have the immediate deadly effects of the disease, but the ongoing effects of long-haul COVID, which is going to affect us for years. And all of that biochemistry needs to be properly understood, and indeed biophysics. So there's so much work to be done, and we should be able to put an argument together based on the need to have an independent resource to deal with this deadly disease. And indeed, the next round of deadly disease, which was previously Ebola, and maybe who knows what in the future. And it could as equally arise in Africa as the coronavirus arose in China. There's no discrimination between pathogens. And we should have a continental capacity to deal with this in a scientific manner, equally as well as the Chinese have done, which has been remarkable. So I think that is an argument that we should actually construct and put forward to our national governments. That's all I need to say now.
Right. So in terms of, if you have to say to a politician, so how does this serve society? So in biophysics, sort of global health and bioeconomy, even if they're into that word, are two obvious ways to hook to hook them in. Except sometimes I feel when we have to resort to that, it kind of feels like it kind of cuts off biophysics research just for the science discovery, and specifically like in areas like quantum biology, where it's like several steps between quantum biology and like global health or bioeconomy. Or I mean, I guess you can talk about photo devices, which is probably big business, but how do we sort of say that this is a legitimate area and fruitful area of science discovery, and that Africa should be in it?
Can I contribute a little bit to this discussion?
Absolutely.
When it comes to biophysics research, and the last speaker actually alluded to that, it's very expensive. Okay, and depending on the country that you are coming from, how do the politicians look at this type of research to leverage it with the country needs, immediate needs, so to speak? And I think one of the things we need to start talking about is using the COVID as an example of what the long-term benefits of biophysics research in Africa could be. Because anytime you talk to the politicians about this, I came back from the US with a biophysics mindset, doing a lot of NMR, solid state NMR, membrane protein. And at that time, people just didn't know what all this is all about. Okay, because they wanted to know the immediate benefits of what you are doing. So I think we now have an opportunity with COVID, this pandemic, to kind of say that, hey, if we are able to actually move biophysics to the next level, then we should also be able to be talking about vaccine manufacturing. We should be able to be talking about tackling our own problems when it comes to pandemics. I think that is the way we need to move, because if you look at majority of the African countries, I think funding of biophysics research is going to be problematic.
Okay. Are there any other directions that people go?
I have my hand up.
Oh, go ahead.
I just wanted to point out that I think we have to have a multi-pronged strategy. So you've heard many of the prongs. I think it has to be top down and bottom up. We've heard that as a community, we need to become organized ourselves, not just nationally, but we also have to become organized regionally and with Pan-Africa. I think the African strategy is one example where the community could organize in a Pan-African way. I also think using the light source itself is another way. And then there must be other Pan-African bodies and regional bodies. For example, I come to the African Academy of Science, where I note that Professor Iqbal Parker is chair of the Southern African region. And also he's a bioscientist. I think that we have to really make the African Academy of Science work for us here, and that means becoming members and then lobbying within it and participating within it. Maybe others of you here are members of the Academy as well, but I think it's an important body. NASAC is also a very important body, but we need to populate ourselves onto these regional bodies and Pan-African bodies, and we need to get involved in the top-down or use them as a springboard to get involved in the top-down, then I think we should deliberately organize conferences and so on to attract a regional and Pan-African membership. And I actually see this happening. And to a certain extent, I see these regions work together, but it should go on to attracting funds. So I agree completely with Trevor that we need African governments to take over, but we can see things like START, for example, is a bridging funding opportunity, and we should never see it as more, but we can use our international friends to help us with regional bridging or Pan-African bridging. Or I also think we should strengthen BioStruct Africa. I think that we do have many organizations, probably I don't know them all, but I think we should have them on a website, and we should structure them, and we should make sure we participate in them and building them. And so I think from the top down and bottom up, we can really grow things. I think it's very powerful logic that the biosciences are absolutely necessary, especially in Africa. We are the ones who have to shoulder the load of understanding Africa's disease burden. So that's how I feel that let's have this multi-pronged approach, incorporating all the different aspects that have been mentioned here. And so I think getting involved in regional and Pan-African activities, academies, and organizations, and deliberately building those bridges. So let's do that. I think we have to just keep pushing. We can't give up. And then we have to work together more. We have to see, how can, let's say, the strategy help the bioscientists, and the bioscientists help the light source people, and the light source people help the bioscientists, and so on. And just grow bit by bit. So I've seen from Trevor and Chart, one thing that they would like to see is the Sir Aaron Klug Center elevate to a regional facility. And then that's another thing. I think we can actually achieve that, elevate it to a regional facility. So I think let's build on all of those organizations, groupings, connections that we have.
Okay. So we're coming up to, I guess we've been at it for an hour and 15 minutes. Is there anyone else who wants to contribute some ideas, some input? Then I think sort of as we close, from what I can.
You have a hand.
Is it okay to contribute?
Oh, to tell you the truth, I do not see where hands are. Is that, I thought that hand meant applause.
No. They want to, yeah.
It's for contribution.
I apologize. I don't even like why would it mean applause? But I'm sorry. Go ahead. Emmanuel, go ahead.
Oh, yeah. Can I speak, please?
Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah. So how I see it is, I think this strategy is the best way to go, because my feeling is that we really have to do something first before we can get the politicians on board or to get the funding. So we probably need to identify those things that are the most immediate things that we can do to produce results, which we can present to them, and then it can motivate them to give us what we need. So also, the best way to sell this to them is not just talking about finding COVID vaccine for COVID or therapeutics for COVID, but also this is something that is going to create jobs for Africans. So it's not just because sometimes if you say you want to find a vaccine for COVID, COVID is being researched worldwide, they might actually think that, oh, somebody in England or USA can do that. Why do we have to do it here? But then also you have to understand that malaria, there are more people who died from malaria last year than COVID-19. So it's something we really have to think strategically. And I think this approach is something that once we have the structure, I think it's going to be good. So I like this approach very well. That's all of my contribution.
Thank you. Patrick.
Yeah, please, can I say something?
Is that Namdi?
Let me unmute.
Okay.
Okay. I'm on.
Patrick, then
All right.
Namdi.
Okay. Patrick,
Yep, go ahead.
thanks for this opportunity. I think the contributions so far are wonderful and welcome. But I also want to deviate a little. Instead of doing a regional thing, why don't you start from the countries? Pick those interested, pick those are capable, pick those that are hardworking. Start from the countries, 1 or 2 persons, start development protocols from the countries. Then we cannot go to the region. Within that region, you use developers so that when it gets to the region, the contribution will come from various countries and how far they are able to persuade their different governments to get involved. That once it gets to the region, to be easier and to cover the entire Africa. It will make it more easier than if we just base it at the regional level. It will be some persons will be cut off, and we'll discover that at the end of the day we will achieve, but not as much as expected. So I feel that these things should start from the basis, from the countries, and go to the region, then the entire Africans will be touched, and at the end we will see that we achieve a lot. So that's my little contribution. Thank you. Patrick from Nigeria.
Hi, thank you. Namdi, did I hear your name? Did you say? Okay, so how about any more final comments?
Hello, can you hear me now?
Oh, I can hear you now. Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. I seriously want to appreciate everyone for this opportunity and for this privilege and for this concept. It's actually a very welcome development. And me, for one, I'm very, very happy about it. So just like the last speaker said, I believe, I was even thinking whether he was trying to mind, because that is actually what I wanted to speak. Because if we want to leave it at the regional level, we might not really get the intentions that this strategy wants to achieve. So I think it will be nice if we have probably representatives in each of the countries that have shown interest, because this is a very serious business, and because we're thinking and we're trying to see a way we can talk to our politicians. If we can start from the countries that are very, very keen, that are showing interest in this summit, I think it will go a long way than just leaving it at the regional level. And again, you know, in physics we have a lot of branches. We have a lot of branches. And me, for instance, I work in a regulatory agency in Nigeria here, where basically I do a lot of instrumentations. I'm trying to look at how I can be of importance to this, or how I can really, really put in my experience and my experience on what I've done for the past 10 years now, because I've basically worked on instrumentations where I use a lot of instruments. For instance, the high performance Leukey chromatography, the AS, the GCs, and all these modern equipment. So I'm trying to see where someone that studied, that is majored in instrumentation, can actually be of importance to this summit or this strategy that we're trying to form now. Thank you.
Fantastic. Patrick, is that, now I know what this little blue thing means. Patrick, is that your hand up again?
No, it's not my hand.
No,
I'm done.
Okay,
Okay. So, so I think then we can close, and I think what we can do is like maybe convene again in some, say, month's time, 1 month, 2 months time. I have everyone's email address. And what we can do is start thinking about, okay, what kind of white papers do we write individually or jointly, or people can collaborate. So one framework in my mind in terms of topics to write on is just the structure of this conference in terms of the sessions. So I'd like to see like a quantum biology white paper, molecular biophysics, cellular biophysics, and you know, onto biomaterials, which is the sessions on Friday. And then you know, people can work on those, and it doesn't necessarily have to be you know, country specific. One thing I sort of know about AU politics is that the African Union does not actually have any government authority. It just has like sort of have some convening authority. But one thing that heads of state and ministers, they do sort of coalesce around coherently around a concept. So it's not like the United States where there's a federal government or and then you have the individual states, and science is basically run by the federal government. In the African Union, it's 54 sovereign states who may or may not do things in the same way. But at least we could provide them a coherent framework to surround their policies around. So that would be, I think that's our challenge as we, you know, write white papers and then put them out there on the street for the consumption of parliaments and heads of state. Katevi, is there anything else you want to add to close?
No, I think it's all well said. I think,
Okay.
yeah, everybody's input is.
Simon? Simon, is there anything you want to add to close?
No, I agree with Katevi. There's been a very good discussion.
Okay. Well, thank you everyone for coming. And if you have any additional thoughts, you know, you can always send it into the conference email address, which is conferences@africanphysicalsociety.org, or go to that webpage that Katevi showed, the African strategy. What is it? It's africanphysicsstrategy.org.
Yes, .org, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everybody.
Thank you.
Oh, the next session starts at 1500 GMT.
Okay.
GMT +2, I'm sorry, GMT +2. So that's Central Africa time.
Mm.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, everyone.